Hi, everybody, and welcome back. We are going to talk about critical criminology today. This is a very old theory that was largely developed from Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels' Communist Manifesto. And it focuses on explaining crime through the lens of economics and economic systems. So the first thing I want to do is define social solidarity. And social solidarity is the extent to which an individual is connected to society. More social solidarity is, air quotes, better according to this theory. Too much is not good, but not enough is not good either. We have to have the right balance. But that more social solidarity is better than less, but you don't want too much. And according to Marx and Engels, crime is a symptom of decline in social solidarity. That when there is less social solidarity in a society, when people are less committed to society, to community, to the value of the group, the welfare of everyone over the individual, ultimately crime is going to increase, right? Their overarching argument is that if you can increase social solidarity, you will decrease crime. So Marx and Engels looked at social solidarity in terms of an economic perspective, and they argued that the division of labor is unjust and that exploitation results between one class or another, so that the people who are rich are exploiting the people who are middle class or the people who are poor, that the people who are rich are the ones who corner the market for all of the resources, all of the wealth, which results in the labor market having to sell their time and sell their efforts, right? And ultimately that they don't get compensated at a fair rate for their time and their efforts, which is just going to concentrate wealth among the rich and keep the middle class and the poor under the control of this small group of people that have the bulk of all the income and the bulk of all the wealth. So they argue that social solidarity could be regained through overthrowing capitalism. And not just overthrowing capitalism, but it would have to happen in a bloody revolution. So it's not enough to just remove the institution of capitalism, but according to Marx and Engels, you would have to, excuse me, kill the leaders of capitalism, in a bloody revolution to literally remove them so they can never have an influence again. Upon their removal from, being murdered, they argue that they would then reinstitute a new system of economics, a system that is divided evenly and where everybody's contribution is adequately rewarded and fairly rewarded, and where there's no such thing as one group of people that have the bulk of one small group of people that have the bulk of wealth. Marx and Engels argue that conflict is inherent to capitalism. Capitalism is very much about competition. It's very much about meritocracy. And they argue that this breeds crime, or the idea of aggression and crime, that we are all competing for resources and we don't all play by the same rules. Some people have more to compete with, some people have less, and exploitation results. The fittest will weed out the least fit, and that it's not fair, which ultimately results in people's anger and aggression and deviation into crime. They argue three major things under this theory. First, there are too few resources under capitalism. There's not enough for everybody to go around, but everybody is competing for, there's one pie, we're all competing for it, and some people get a piece that's this big and some people get a piece that's this big, and therefore there's not enough resources for everybody. They argue that people become angry when they realize this inequality and this unequal access to goods, that people who have more means, more money, more wealth have an easier time obtaining goods and meeting their needs than people who have less. And when people make this realization or come to this philosophical moment where they realize I have less for any number of reasons, you get more, I get less, it's not fair, they feel anger, they feel frustration, and they lash out. And the third postulate is that these groups would organize to bring their violence as a group in order to take over the goods that exist in a culture and redistribute them among the people. That literally, when they make that realization that you have more, I have less, it's not fair, because you started off with more opportunity than I did. That the only solution here is to literally overthrow these people, gain control over all of society's goods, and then hand it out in an equal distribution. People still have to make their contribution, people still have to work, but everybody is compensated in a fair capacity rather than a stratified capacity, which is what we have under capitalism. So they argue that capitalism is and that stratification that some people have more, some people have less, is the root of inequality, which ultimately leads to crime. They argue if that system was overthrown and if we reinstituted in its place communism or a socialist perspective where everybody's needs get met because everybody is getting an equal slice of the pie rather than a stratified slice of the pie. So nobody has a piece this big and nobody has a piece this big. Everybody's piece is the same size. And the argument being that everybody's needs therefore are met. If everybody's getting, everybody's contributing with their work to society, everybody's getting the same slice of pie, then there's no such thing as stratification. It's not unfair. Everybody's getting fed. Everybody has a roof over their head. Everybody has clothes on their back. And that competitive anger will dissipate and fade away. There will be no reason for theft. There will be no reason for illegal markets and drug dealing. There will be no reason for violent disputes that result over money and inequality, because everybody will have their needs met and they will have what they want or what they need. However, one of the shortcomings of Marxist criminology is its inability to apply policy recommendations, right? There is a resistance for Marxist criminologists to come out and say, here are some steps that we can take to, level the playing field or more evenly distribute resources in society. So it's very weak on policy. It is interesting to point out, though, that our current approach to the criminal justice system is, in fact, deeply embedded in capitalism. It may not appear to be a for-profit model, but it certainly creates millions upon millions of jobs, millions upon millions of incomes, which then therefore stimulate the economy, and on it goes. And it really becomes this sort of circular thing where, yes, we want crime to lower, and we don't want people committing crime, but we also don't want to lose millions of jobs either, right? For law-abiding citizens who are correctional officers and police officers and probation officers and social workers and any number of the many, many arms and careers that exist in the criminal justice realm. So it's interesting that, even crime is of course intertwined in capitalism, but even our response to crime and our attempts to control and measure crime are fully entangled in capitalism, which, going back to Marx and Engels, would argue this is the root of all crime.